Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning, Renan.
I actually had to ask you how to pronounce your name just because I didn't want to butcher it, but it's Barbara Blake Boy.
Correct.
And you are the Executive Director of the Planning Council for Broward County.
That's correct.
Yes, I did that right.
It's all right.
What does that title mean?
So I work for a board of 20 members, 11 elected officials, 9 non-elected officials, all from different cities throughout Broward County, as well as a representative of the County Commission and the Broward County School Board. And their role is to act as the local planning agency to the Broward County Commission and make recommendations on land use changes, applications to the County Commission, and then the County Commission either adopts them or denies them or adopts them with modifications, kind of thing. So I am the director for the staff that prepares the reports and the analyses. We work with all the different review agencies, all different agencies throughout Broward County and throughout the state. And we gather, when an application comes in, we gather all the information and we make a recommendation based on the policies in the Broward County Land Use Plan to the Broward County Planning Council, and then they consider it at a public hearing, and we forward that recommendation to the County Commission.
How long have you been doing that?
I have been with the agency for 23 years, and I've been the director for 11 years last week.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, so you know your stuff.
Yep.
But with that, you've probably seen a lot of change.
Sure. I would say it's cyclical. You know, we see a lot of applications come in that are pretty straightforward. An increase in density, a change from a commercial or commerce type land use to residential, and they're pretty straightforward, and there's not a lot of public participation. And then we have applications, usually there's one a year, every other year, where that really gets the forces riled up. And we have a lot of communication with the public. They're very interested, and that could be in opposition or support, but usually it's in opposition. When you hear from people, it's because they're unhappy when you hear from the public.
What kind of stuff usually gets people back up?
The kinds of things that get people really excited are people who live on golf courses.
Okay.
And we live in Florida. It's a great golf course area and golfing area, but there's a lot of golf courses going out of business. And
really?
Yes. And what we've seen, I would say since 2004, 2005, we've seen a lot of golf courses proposed to residential uses. And so the neighbors that live on golf courses, they have an expectation that that's going to remain a golf course. And generally golf courses are privately held properties, and they are no longer able to run them. So they're trying to decide a different use, and that's usually residential because obviously our population continues to grow, even more so now. So those are the kind of residents they're opposed to their view being taken away, additional residents in their neighborhood, those people coming to their neighborhood. So that really gets people excited.
When people put up a fight like that for that exact, let's use that scenario of golf course turning into a residential, do they just kick the can down the road and it will eventually happen if the zoning is changed? Or is it hand-in-hand cooperation where, yeah, it's going to get rezoned, but maybe not 30 units or 400 units, it'll be 27 units or something?
I would say, so my experience with golf courses has been that it's either they come in with a strong proposal that they've worked with the community, so some people are happy and some people are unhappy, or they're coming in all in for a higher density. And I've seen that be put on hold for years. And the community kind of wears them down to accepting that the community will accept that the change is going to happen. And maybe they do have the opportunity to weigh in on it and maybe reduce the residential units. So, I've seen all different scenarios. I've seen where residents are just tired of the golf course. There's vermin, when golf courses are abandoned, it's open space, but it's not a park, and no one's caring for it. No one's maintaining it. So people, they get worn down. That's my opinion. And so then they're ready to kind of make nice and see what can we have that's going to clean up this area also.
That's a fascinating point of view. I never even thought about that. But first, I'm still shocked by the fact that golf courses are going out of business. Like golf is almost a religion here in Florida. That, tennis, pickleball is like, it's what people do.
Yeah, they're outside, right? I mean, when I was growing up, my dad played golf every single weekend and during the week if he could. You know, he was an avid golfer, holidays, whatever right. It was. And when I went away to college, I went to University of Florida in Gainesville, and during the summer, we would go to the par 3 golf course, and I had an old set of clubs that my mom had from the early 80s, and I kind of learned how to play golf.
Do you still golf?
No.
No, you just drive really fancy, cool-looking cars.
Correct.
Yeah, that I'm extremely jealous of, and I don't want to go into that tangent because I'm just going to feel really bad about the car I drive versus what you drive, but you have a couple of beautiful vehicles.
Well, thank you. And like I said, I said, my husband's a car guy. And when we finished the conversation, you said, no, your husband's not just the car guy.
And that's exactly
it's you too, right?
When we were chatting, when we went out for lunch, we were just talking about, things, just randomness. Mm-hmm. And I would think I was complaining about, no, I wasn't complaining about Florida. I was just expressing how challenging it's been to acclimatize in many ways. Mm-hmm. And you lit up when you started talking about your cars. And you're like, this is my husband's hobby, and this is what he does, and then you start getting into the specifics of the vehicle and all that stuff, and that threw me for a loop. It was amazing because you know more about cars than I do, that's for sure. Okay. But your choice in cars is pretty cool.
Well, I'm an avid supporter of racing. My husband raced motorcycles for many years. He got very hurt doing that. Transition to car racing, and I always tell him cars take up much more space than motorcycles, and he agrees, but it's definitely an addiction, and I'm very supportive of the hobby because it keeps him off the streets.
Do you race cars?
I do not. I've been on the track as a passenger before, but I haven't made that step. But I do enjoy cars, and we talk about that from time to time about whether I'm interested in kind of like taking the class and taking the school to see. You? Some days I am and some days I'm not. It just depends. And also it's so hot here that I know it can't be during the summer because of the gear you have to wear.
Right.
And so I think about that might be something for the winter.
Yeah, and winter here is warm.
December and January.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's right. Just, it doesn't rain. It's not sticky. But yes, I didn't even think about all that sort of stuff.
He races all year round, and I don't know how he does it.
He's is that like a career or just a hobby?
It's a hobby, but he's definitely his career. He owns a motorcycle business. They focus on Ducatis, which are an Italian motorcycle.
Yes, it's like the creme de la creme of.
Basically, and
motorcycles.
He raced professionally in his early 20s, and then raced club racing all through the years. Is that why you married him? Pretty much. I mean, we're kind of polar opposites. I work for the government. He's in motorcycles and cars, and it's the perfect balance.
Motorsports are a big thing in the United States, and people that listen to this podcast from Canada, mm-hmm. I don't think have an appreciation of how much Americans love their motorsports, like NASCAR, and I think Miami just had F1 here the other day. Yeah. It is a huge, huge, huge thing. Like it actually, for a Canadian, it'll be Florida. It's bigger than hockey. Like just to put it into context, right?
Yeah.
On the county side, mm-hmm. I'm really curious to hear your perspective. I want to know a little bit about water, because water is everywhere, and we touched on that topic. Before that, for people that don't know much about Broward, mm-hmm. what are the biggest cities in Broward?
Fort Lauderdale, Miramar, Hollywood, Pompano Beach.
Are all of those on the ocean?
No. Miramar starts around State Road 7, westward to I-75, generally. So that's a western. Pembroke Pines is another city, just north of Miramar. Okay. And those cities, so they're western cities for Broward County, and they really came about and really started populating after Hurricane Andrew in 1992. That was kind of the population push for those areas. Hollywood, Fort Lauderdale, Pompano Beach, yes, coastal cities that are they're on the beach.
Are they in capacity?
Well, it depends on what your definition of capacity is. So if your definition of capacity is what the land use plan that drives all density, if if that's your definition of capacity, they're getting close. But this is where golf course type redevelopment,
Right.
Corridor style development comes in, because that's where the cities are really going to see an accommodation for populations. Deteriorating strip malls, big box stores, properties that can no longer sustain are the perfect kind of sites. They're on arterials. They have access to transit. They have access to transportation. And those are kind of the perfect places for multifamily housing. And, 99%, I would say, of what we're going to see for redevelopment is going to be multifamily housing. There's still infill development of single-family homes, but primarily it's going to be multifamily.
In Broward.
In Broward, correct, right. Because we're sitting in Palm Beach County right now,
right.
And we have Miami-Dade County to the south, and we're right in the middle, and all three counties have a different style of development and how land use works and how zoning works. So it's really interesting.
I think a lot of people, when they think of Florida, they're generally thinking Miami-Dade and those places. I think a lot of people don't realize Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood are in Broward. For some reason, I know I did think that it was in Miami-Dade.
That's because you're like metropolitan statistical area.
Yeah.
Just kidding, right?
No, but that's all I knew, right? I knew nothing about Boca when I moved down here. I didn't even know it was in Palm Beach County. I didn't know there was
about it from Seinfeld.
Well,
that's how everybody knows it, right? That's how everybody knows about it.
And that's what people think that Boca was. Mm-hmm. They thought it was a place you came to retire exclusively, and nothing could be further from the truth. But you're seeing this growth. Is the growth in every single one of the counties? I know you can speak to Broward a lot more, but is it do you see this crazy COVID growth still, like people moving down here?
I would say Palm Beach County has much more of Palm Beach County is unincorporated than Broward County.
Can you explain the difference between incorporated and unincorporated?
Sure. So we'll start with Broward County. So Broward County is about 425 square miles of urban area. The remaining 2/3 of the county is unincorporated, but it's conservation area. That's basically the Everglades.
Right.
So the urbanized area, 425 square miles, 31 municipalities, about around 2 million residents, very little vacant land left, but redevelopment opportunities. There is still vacant land, but they're going to be small pieces, less than 5 acres. There's a couple of large swaths of 100 acres that are ready probably for low density development. We are seeing, what we see at the Planning Council staff are cities trying to identify solutions along these corridors, how to accommodate additional population, because it is still coming and people are still interested. There's a big push for rental housing now. I know we're going to talk about affordable housing.
Not necessarily. We could. I feel like I've picked your brain about it so many times.
Yeah, but I think that's like a natural component of housing opportunities is housing affordability. Is there going to be, if we can accommodate population, are they going to be able to afford to live here? What are they spending on transportation and housing? What are they spending, to feed their families? I was talking to my mom the other day. She's, a single person living by herself, and she said, "I can't even imagine being a family and trying to go to the grocery store for my family right now."
It's ridiculous, and it's a conversation that's had amongst families on an ongoing basis. And what people don't realize, it happens almost regardless of what income scale you're on, because the more you make, the more you spend, the more you get taxed. You have different needs and wants.
Cars, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly, right? You can get a car that'll get you from A to B, or you can get a Porsche that'll get you from A to B, or a Lambo or a Ferrari, like my neighbor just picked one up. But they all do the same. But when you're trying to move ahead in your life and pushing forward, you see like things become squeezed all the time because you're trying to move to that other level. Mm-hmm. But when you have kids and the inflation that's happened over the last hour, like private school is a massive, massive expense. And now feeding them, I'm not complaining because I'm fortunate, but it's a strain, especially when you're coming down here and you're moving down as an immigrant like me. Mm-hmm. You have to reestablish everything. You have to reestablish your networks. You have to reestablish your income streams. Like you have to reestablish everything. So it is a major strain, mm-hmm. right? Where do you see the biggest area of growth from an industry perspective in Broward? I've heard things like the Silicon Valley moving down into South Florida.
Right. There's been a big push for that, since COVID and since the relocation. We saw a lot of people coming here to work because they didn't have to stay at their homes.
Right. Remote.
So we did see remote work here, and we have seen a big push, I think, from our economic development division, small businesses, and with the county commission on focusing on relocating those types of businesses to the area because for many reasons, obviously, not obviously, but the salaries in Broward County have been flat forever. I talked to, and these are just conversations I've had with colleagues through the years. The salaries have been flat for 30 years, and we need a bump, right? Because housing costs, and we can't sustain that.
Just inflation.
We have such a service-based economy, and even how do we get those service-based economy people to work? So I think there's a push for financial, for web-based. We're seeing a push now for movie studios and filming.
Yeah, so that's the one I actually read about,
Mm-hmm.
like Hollywood East. Or I mean, there is a push from California down here, anyways. There is a major population shift. That would probably be an organic thing. So, are you seeing like Hollywood 2.0 growing here?
I mean, some of the just people I talk to on a regular basis, and that are working on towards those kinds of projects, county commissioners that are interested in bringing that here and working with the state of Florida. I think it's not a bad idea.
So is the industries being incentivized via tax credits or things like that to come down here?
I think absolutely. Any place that's being kind of wooed to come to Broward County, they're working on incentives, right? And I mean, there's just so many things involved with places relocating to Broward County or anyway in South Florida, because we're not just talking about a place to live, schools for their children. How are those? Private schools. The state just passed the $8,000 per family, right, to put your kids in private school if you're taking them out of public school.
Right.
So we're seeing a lot of different things like that. So there's different incentives coming from all different, not just your, job or kind of moving a business here. What are all the other pieces of it?
Right. So Broward County is like the sandwich county between Palm Beach and Miami-Dade. I've had this and touched on it briefly with you, and I've had multiple people say this to me, and it's a little bit terrifying because I've heard things like Miami's going to be underwater. Like water is a big issue, and sea level rise and all that stuff. And for people that haven't been through, like, there's a monsoon season here. Like I know it's not formal, but it's real.
Right. And there's hurricane season starts tomorrow.
Yeah. I actually just bought a generator for the first time.
Okay.
I don't know how to use it. Somebody's going to come and show me how to use
good.
it. But I have it. To be honest, if I ever come to this point where I need to use it, I'm leaving. It is just like, it's insurance.
Sure.
So like my kids, especially my eldest, is very afraid of thunder and lightning. And last night was crazy.
Last night was insane.
Yeah, it was so scary, right? So we just tried to diffuse and deflect. And my daughter asks me almost every single day, "Did you buy a generator? Did you buy a generator?" Yeah, I bought a generator. Do I know how to use it? No, but I got a generator.
Right. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's sitting in the garage right now. It makes her feel good. I guess, job well done.
Right.
So I hear things like Miami's going to be underwater. What does that mean?
So let's talk about, I like to focus on Broward County because that's where I know. But I mean, obviously, Miami-Dade County is just south, and Key Biscayne and very coastal lands, barrier islands. Moving up north to Broward County. And I would say Dade County and Broward County and Palm Beach County had a great partnership planning for sea level rise and kind of being forward thinking of how to mitigate, how to adapt, how to address, how to plan for, and it's always the best laid plans. So, for example, in Broward County, as part of the land use plan and part of what we analyze when we're looking at land use changes is we have a map called the Priority Planning Area for Sea Level Rise. It's a really long name for a map that means these are areas that are projected to have a 3.3 foot sea level rise by 2070. it's 2023. It's not really that far off.
Right.
We see
Especially when you talk
these,
about the development stuff.
right. And we see 100-year events. And then we saw a 1,000-year event in Broward County just last month in April. I had to leave the flood. I had to leave my car downtown. My husband luckily has a giant truck and was able to come pick me up. But I left my car downtown for 2 days in the parking garage.
Wow.
So, we were a little in the weeds driving home, and even though we were in this huge truck, it wasn't great. But you try to plan, because I at the end of the day, people ask questions. When are people going to stop coming here? When are people going to stop proposing development? And I think that comes down to the banking industry and the insurance industry. When they can't get loans, when they can't get insurance, that's the thing that's going to kind of stop, mitigate proposals, slow it down, and we're not seeing that yet. We haven't reached that tipping point of people being unable to get loans, unable to get insurance. But I think that's the tipping point. But the best that we can do is plan for the future and try to make good decisions. If there's a proposal on the barrier island, looking at all of the different pieces of it, is there, obviously every amendment, we look at the same things, and it's kind of potable water supply, sanitary sewer, solid waste, open space, drainage. Those are kind of like the top 5. And then we talk about transportation, and you talk about schools. But none of these things, there's other things too, but none of these things are independent, because they all play together. Because if you're having 100-year events and 1,000-year events, and are you putting people at risk? Are you putting property at risk? From their proposal. These are all parts of the consideration, and part of that goes, to the policymakers and what the direction is that they want to take for the future of their city and the counties.
It's a lot of stuff to consider all at the same time, and
that's just part of it. I didn't even talk about the environmental.
So that's it. That's what I was going to, like, environmental effects, and whichever side of the fence you're on.
Right.
I mean, it's not a one location problem; it's an everybody problem.
Right. So. Right. And I mean, when you're talking about wetlands, we were talking earlier about, in Broward County, 425 square miles of the urban area, there's still wetlands in there. And there's wetland mitigation banks within the urban area out west in Miramar and Pembroke Pines, and kind of throughout the county.
What does that mean?
That means that a developer has bought credits. They're maintaining an area in perpetuity as a wetland, because perhaps they had, especially in Miramar and Pembroke Pines, as they were being developed, that's really western Broward County. And that's, all of Broward County used to be the Everglades, just like, the rest of the Tri-County area. So they have mitigated the impacts of their development by buying these credits and creating these banks.
Right, and those credits they can use towards...
Well, they use them towards their development, because if they had X amount of acres of prime wetlands on the site they want to develop, they've relocated that to maintain a natural area in perpetuity, so that for the development rights.
Amazing. So all of this stuff that you have to juggle, does that fall mainly on your shoulders, these decisions?
We have a great staff, right? Small staff. We're a staff of 7. I think we're really efficient. I think we do a good, solid job. But everyone in the office just about touches every single recommendation that we make. Ultimately, it comes down to, I'm the person that the council hires, so it's ultimately my decision. If there's a mistake, it's my responsibility. But the recommendations, ultimately I have the final say, but we spend a lot of time talking about, especially things that are controversial. We'll spend a lot of time talking about, how to address certain pieces. Sometimes there's policies in the county plan that may be not palatable to other people, but how to kind of bring those things together. And then you're balancing the decision makers, the policy makers, the elected officials. And it can be a challenge, but it's really fun most days.
What would you say the biggest issue is right now in Broward County, from a planning perspective, of course?
I would say transportation, adaptation, because I was starting to say all of those things I was talking about, none of them are independent. The environment plays into all of those. The environment plays into transportation, how you're going to get from one place to the other when there's a 1,000-year event and you can't drive your car.
Right.
How are you going to get there? How are you going to get your kids to school? How are you going to have drinking water if there's a problem with the aquifer? So I think, when you're just looking at the county as a whole, transportation's a challenge. Affordable housing, I mean, that's not just a challenge.
What does affordable housing mean? What is the definition?
So there's a definition in state statute, and that's basically what we follow and is adopted into the county plan. Affordable housing, there's actually 5 levels that are adopted into statute, but we're mostly talking about a maximum of 120% of the median income, which I think the median income in Broward County, I just heard the number a couple of weeks ago. Let's say it's $76,000 for a family of 4. So a family of 4 could make up to 120% of that. And if it's deed restricted, that would be affordable housing. They're spending less than 30% of their salary on that, on housing. And then the levels, go down from there. Up to 80% is low income, which is, like I said, up to 80%. And then very low is up to 50%, I think. Sorry.
Wow. Oh, my God. I'm putting you on the spot here.
I know, because I'm like, usually I have my plan and I'm looking at it, and it seems like things that you would remember all the time. And part of it's really natural, but part of it becomes a challenge.
Is there an action plan to try to help that along?
So a couple things that the county has done. So we started talking about Broward, Palm Beach, the differences between them. So just to touch on that again, Dade and Palm Beach both have much greater unincorporated areas. So the county commissions have different roles in their counties for affordable housing and for these types of measures. Since Broward County is primarily incorporated into these 31 cities, we have a very unusual system, and it's a county-wide land use plan, and that was voted on in 1974 when there was much more unincorporated area for the county to have countywide land use authority. That's why we have the Broward County Planning Council. And to balance that with the cities, because every city also has to have their own city plan that's at least as restrictive as the county plan. So the state has also preempted local governments from, if they do require an affordable housing set aside, they have to make the developer whole, makes it very challenging. So what we've kind of moved to in the county from a land use perspective is incentivizing. How can we incentivize affordable housing? That's kind of like the corridor redevelopment we're talking about, where we're encouraging direct access to transportation and transit to try to help with those pieces. That's if there's an affordable housing component, residential is permitted by right. And there's other criteria also. Bonus density programs to be able to, if you're deed restricting affordable housing, you can have more units. So we've kind of made the shift to look at that. But the county as a whole, every 3 or 4 years, they do an affordable housing needs assessment, and primarily it's been done by FIU on their Metropolitan Center. And what that focuses on is...
What does FIU stand for?
Florida International University. Okay. So it's a state university, and it's a planning center that they have, the Metropolitan Center. And every 3 or 4 years, they update this needs assessment, and it takes a look by every 31 cities in the unincorporated area. What's the average income? What's the average rental cost? What's the average housing cost? What's the demand in the cities? And then where are the shortages for moderate, low, very low affordable housing, to kind of get a snapshot of how the cities are kind of looking. The county commission's taken it to the next step, which is they've asked FIU to prepare a master plan for affordable housing to share with the cities, to try to work together with the cities. I think there's no one in Broward County that doesn't recognize that affordable housing and housing affordability is a huge issue, providing residences for safe places for people to live. And so that plan, I think, should come together by the end of this year. They've been working with all the different cities, whoever wants to talk to them. They've been out in the community gathering data, talking to people, seeing what their needs are, what their wants are for their cities, for how residential development kind of comes about, and for affordability.
For the cities that don't want to participate, or I guess don't want to play ball, that don't understand that the big picture there's a problem, but doesn't mean that they necessarily want to participate for maybe some obvious or not so obvious reasons. Is there anything that can be done, or is that just you need to move on and find a partner, a dance partner?
Well,
you're smiling. I'm sure you've done this dance.
Yeah, well, because it is really just such a challenge. Because I think when you talk to cities, right, they have 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 150,000 residents, and through their eyes, they're the experts for their city, the public officials that are there. So it's really a challenging time to bring together the county and the cities, because many of the cities, despite maybe what the data says, they think they're doing a great job, and they don't think that they need to provide more opportunities. And this is just a generic, this isn't just a single city. But I think that it's one of the challenges. We have enough. How do you move past that? And I think that's the challenge to all of the elected officials as they come together, whether they be county commission or an elected official in a city.
You'd mentioned drinking water a couple of times, and one of the things that was surprising to me when I moved down here was people said don't drink the tap water. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, and I think it's different within different cities. I've always drank tap water. I don't really have an issue with it. I think I grew up from that generation that drinks from the tap and water fountains. But I was a little paranoid, so I put in a filtration system in my house. Did I make a mistake and waste a couple of $1,000s?
No, I think it's great. So I will say I always drank out of the tap. I grew up in Plantation, and also I grew up before bottled water was a thing, right? But through the years, from Plantation, we moved to Oakland Park. My husband and I moved to Oakland Park, and I did not like the water. And I started drinking bottled water there. And then I worked downtown Fort Lauderdale, and I don't like the water in that building. And so I was drinking. It's
different from location.
It's different from location to location.
Why?
I've moved back. Well, they have different providers. So even though it's all coming from the same aquifer, it's being processed in a different way. So So now we've moved back to Plantation, and I'm so happy. I don't even buy bottled water anymore. And people come to our house. Oh, do you have a bottle of water? I'm like, no, I'm sorry. Can I get you a plastic cup? Like a recyclable, like a cup. I'll get you a cup with water, and it's really the opposite of how it used to be. And I fill up my water jugs at home and take them to my office.
Wow.
So I love Plantation water.
But the water's safe.
The water's great. I love it.
What about the water here in Boca? Do you know anything about it?
I have no idea, but I'm sure it's fine. If you have a filtration system.
I can honestly tell you, I have a filtration system in the house, and then I have a filtration system in my fridge. Mm-hmm. If I don't change the filters, the water has a different smell.
Yes.
I could actually tell when the filters run out before the indicator lets me know.
You don't need the light.
That's right. And you can smell it. Mm-hmm. The water is different. I can also smell it when I take a shower, or especially when the kids take a shower, it smells like something. I don't know what it is, but it's chemically, maybe like chlorine.
Chlorine-y?
Yeah, something like that. It's definitely got a scent to it. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe people are right. I have to be careful.
I think it's great.
Water is everywhere here.
Right.
And people obviously think of the ocean. What they don't realize is the vast canals and water drainage systems that are throughout. And I think also within the communities, they also play a role because they feed into everything. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that?
A little. So the thing about me is I'm kind of dangerous. I know a little about too many things, but not a lot. But I mean, even the drainage, and I'm always going to go back to Broward County, right?
Yeah, of
because
course.
that's my
your
home,
home,
and that's where I've worked. So in Broward County, we have a primary drainage system, secondary drainage system, tertiary drainage system. Many of the lakes that are in communities are used for drainage and fill, so they served a dual purpose when the communities were developed. The primary drainage system is mostly east-west, and those are the canals that you see. Some of them go to the intercoastal. Some of them go.
So
in.
that fresh water goes right into the ocean?
Well, there's salinity control structures along the canals also. So to the salinity control structure, it's basically brackish water, comes in from the ocean. It's tidal. And then west of there, it's for the Everglades. So a lot of times you hear when a big hurricane is coming, hopefully never, but
hopefully.
Right, our big
I have a generator.
I heard you had a generator. That's so good. Hopefully you'll know how to use it. Hopefully keep the instructions. So when they'll say, in the old days, they'd be like, the water management district didn't lower the canals, or they lowered it too much, so you're always kind of like hearing things like that. But all of those systems work together, to provide the ebb and flow of what's going to happen with drainage in the county.
It's fascinating how complicated things are here because you have the ocean on one side, and now you also have this booming population growth. Is it safe to say that over the last 3 to 4 years, specifically around this COVID fiasco, that it's exponentially grown, or was it the same steady rate year over year?
I would say what we're seeing for growth is to address population that was anticipated, but now we're looking at a different level of population than we had been anticipating even probably 10 years ago. What we were looking at, I think we're growing faster. There's more people coming here than were anticipated.
Why do you think that is?
It's a great place to live. I mean, it's a great place to live. It's a great place to recreate. It's a great place to work. We have a strong. I think people that come here are surprised. Like, I always think, like, people come here for vacation and people end up moving here. People came here for COVID to remotely work, and now they want to live here.
Yeah.
It's a great place. I've never lived anywhere else except for Florida.
It's amazing because the premise of the podcast is for transplants.
Right.
But I realized very, very quickly is that asking the opinion of a transplant is almost like asking people how their marriage is during their honeymoon, because there's good and bad. So, but I mean, the real on the ground people are people like you, people that I've been fortunate enough to sit across and just hearing you talk. And the amount of information that I'm trying to pluck out of your brain so I can, input it into mine, and now the listeners, like, that would take me 10 lifetimes, and I'll still wouldn't even scratch the surface of what you actually know, and give us a perspective on, the challenges that are here, and also what the future looks like and how that's being reconciled for. And that's like what the purpose is. And then the podcast itself just is a wealth of information. I'm a very curious guy. You're a very easy and approachable person to talk to, and you have all this information. But Florida in of itself is complicated, and each city has different rules, and then you have the counties, and then you don't get that when you're coming from a place like Canada. Right. You don't realize the scope of how big Florida really is.
Right. I mean, when you talk about the state legislature that just ended their session earlier this month, and the kinds of things that come down from the state legislature, and then you have the county structure and the city structure, and then there's some people who are privileged enough to live in homeowners associations, so they have that kind of layer also.
I'd use the term privilege loosely. I just got 2 very threatening letters from my homeowners association.
It was kind of tongue-in-cheek. Right?
One, because I didn't cut my palm trees and it's hurricane season, or I will be fined $100 per day for every day that they're not trimmed. I called them and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" She kind of laughed at me. The manager is from Canada originally, so she's like, "Okay, you just don't get it yet." But I'm the one who sends out those letters. And then another one was for painting my house, because they removed the metal shutters and I put in impact glass. So there's like these ugly patch up things. So homeowners association are real. It's like being watched all the time.
I think there's podcasts just about homeowners associations and like nightmare stories.
There has to be. Yeah. I have friends that have told me some stories of like really weird things. But it's, to someone like me who homeowner association gated communities are new, it's like an encroachment on privacy. Like, what's it any of your business that my dog walked around in the backyard, right? Or somebody, he doesn't live in a gated community, put turf in his backyard. And one of the neighbors, he caught him on camera coming over, hopped the fence into his backyard to take pictures of the turf so you can report it to somebody.
Right? Because this needs to be reported.
And this is crazy. Like, people here have arms. Like, you don't.
Right. You don't go on people's property. We're in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a crazy place.
Yeah. So homeowners association, I had to, it's something that's been sitting here. It's a very touchy topic. I have a great homeowners association, and the president was on my podcast. He's great, and they manage it really well, but you don't fall out of line. Like, you do as you're told, or else you get these letters.
We don't live in a homeowners association. We can't live in a homeowners association.
Why?
Because of our car and motorcycle hobbies.
How many cars
It would be brutal. My husband brings home a race trailer every couple of weeks to drop off a car or pick up a car. And I'm like, the neighbors are going to hate us, right? And we know our neighbors. It's not like we don't know our neighbors. You? No, I don't think so. Maybe. I mean, we'll find out one day. But I'm always very I'm anxious about it, because I think we don't have a homeowners association, but that doesn't mean that people.
Is that why you wouldn't move to a place with a homeowners association?
Yeah, 100%.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, my husband spent the weekend in our garage with the door down. We have an air conditioner in the garage.
Yeah, I would assume. Installing
a new exhaust on a car, and then. And then he opens the garage to start it. And I mean, it's not probably totally intrusive, but I think we would run into, it's worth it not to run into problems for those.
So you look for a property that didn't have a homeowner association.
We've only moved twice ever. I've been with my husband for 21 years, and we lived in 2 houses.
It's really different from most people I speak to, because I found that Americans as a whole are pretty transient, but they don't move out of Florida.
No, we moved into the house we moved into in Plantation is the house my husband grew up in. His parents moved to North Carolina, and he always wanted to live in his childhood home. It's a great location. It's amazing. On a waterway, tidal waterway. We have access to the Intracoastal and the ocean. Always wanted to, and I was super resistant, because I'm like, it's too much. It's too expensive. Let me make a spreadsheet. All the reasons no. That was in 2018. Because his parents were like, do you want to buy the house? And then fast forward, he had the bad accident that I touched on.
Right.
And they were like, this is your last chance in 2019. I'm like, I love you. You're alive. Let's move. It's fine. And we made the move to Plantation.
2019. You lucked out.
December 2019.
Oh, wow. You lucked out.
So, and I told him a couple of years, maybe a year and a half into COVID, I said, I am so happy that we made this move for so many reasons. He's like, but? No, but. I love it here. I'm so glad we made the move, because working from home and being at home all the time.
Did you work from home all of COVID? I mean,
No.
Florida was open.
No, it was open, but we had the county offices, and we have this smaller structure, and we don't report to county administration, so we have a little bit more flexibility. I work for the chair of the board directly. I had our staff on a rotating schedule, so our office was covered every single day, and we had the phones forwarded, to your cell phones. And what we were lacking was we didn't have laptops for everyone at the time. The county's transitioned to a system where the computers are all laptops now, so you can just take it with you if the county's going to be closed. But I was basically the only one with a laptop if I wasn't in the office. So, but I worked from home every day, 5 days a week, and then it was making me crazy. I couldn't manage it. It was hard to manage people. I brought people back in 2 days a week, and then 3 days a week, and then I came back full time. I think we stopped at 2 days. I came back in full time and said, see, it's great. And then everybody else came back in full time the next month. So we were back in by September or October that year, full time, 2020. So we only worked from home for 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
And it was not for me. Once in a while or once a week, it's
Do you
fine.
still do it? Do you ever work from home if you don't have a choice?
Occasionally I allow myself the flexibility, to take home the laptop if I know, if I have an appointment, or this morning, because I was coming up to Boca and I wanted to look nice. And so I
You
didn't
look
want.
great.
I go to thank you, but I go to the office. I get in around 6:45. So I didn't really want to go to the office first, then come up here.
You get into the office at 6:45.
Yeah, so the other great thing that COVID did for our office is we do a 4-day work week. So half the office is in Monday through Thursday, the other half of the office is in Tuesday through Friday. And so we work a longer day. So we work a 10-hour day those days. So I'm off every Friday.
That 3-day weekend idea has been tossed around many places. Do you find that you're more productive, less productive?
It's so great.
Is it?
After COVID, we had developed a system back during the recession because we were trying to reward employees, and we didn't have a lot of, we couldn't give them more money. So we had come up with this every other Friday idea. Half the office was off one Friday, half the office was off the other Friday. And I always thought I could never go to a 10-hour workday. Well, COVID taught me that we could, and we did. So January 1st, 2021, we went to this other program, and it's worked phenomenally. And we have a small office, so you would think it'd be more challenging.
Sure.
But it's been great.
And you probably get extra time to recharge.
Yeah, my Fridays are great. I see. I did hurt myself during COVID.
How?
Doing too much yoga at home by myself. And I hurt my shoulder, and I see a physical therapist now every Friday and work out.
Heard anybody say I've hurt myself doing too much yoga?
Yeah, you don't know. You have no idea. But I hurt myself, and so I see a physical therapist. I have a standing appointment on Fridays, and it's a workout. It's basically an hour workout, and then I'm going to the eye doctor this Friday. I'm taking my mom to the eye doctor this Friday. So it's a great flexibility. I can have lunch with people here and there, and
so you're off on Friday.
I do answer the phone. I do check my emails. But I'm able to make the decision of, do I want to address this now, or can this wait until Monday? If it's something urgent, I'm certainly going to take care of it. All the board members have my cell phone number. That's their primary way of communicating with me. So if they send me a text message and they need to talk, we're going to talk, because I work for them and I'm available. If it's 9:00 at night and I'm like, hi, Saturday night, somebody texts me.
Does your husband get annoyed at that?
No, my husband works 24 hours a day. He has his own businesses. So he's not, it's not in him to be annoyed if I'm taking, a couple minutes to address something.
What do you see 3 to 5 years from now in Broward County from a planning perspective? What do you think the biggest changes will be?
I think the biggest changes that people are going to see visually are going to be along these corridors we talked about, because they're used to seeing these strip plazas and box stores that are set way back on the property and are all surface parking right now. We're going to see multifamily closer to these roads. So you're going to see higher structures when you're driving along Federal Highway and Commercial Boulevard and Oakland Park Boulevard, all the boulevards, all the roads. I think visually that's going to be a huge change. I think I think there's going to be policy shifts that may not be apparent visually, but people will start kind of feeling the effects of it. I think there's going to be, there might be a bigger push on redevelopment on the Barrier Island within the rights that they already have, transfer of development rights. That's allowed within the plan now. And what that means is that you're taking unused density and you're transferring it to another property, but then that property that's being transferred from is going to be retained as an open space, as a historic resource, as an environmental property. So I think that you'll still continue to see redevelopment on the Barrier Island, but it may not be the fast and furious pace that you're seeing kind of throughout the rest of the county. And I think it's going to have to be smart. It's going to have to be adaptive. It's going to have to be the right thing for the residents.
Are the counties talking to one another?
Sure. I think, kind of as a newcomer to this area, one of the most interesting things that happens is Monroe County, Dade County, Broward County, and Palm Beach County all work together, this climate change compact, and they have an annual meeting, and it's a 2-day event. This past December, it was at the Broward County Convention Center, so it rotates counties each year also. The counties come together to talk about what the projections are, what the plans are. They bring in speakers from all over the world that have experience and different kinds of technology, consideration of of different things, things that maybe, we're not thinking about here, or we need to be thinking about to mitigate, to adapt. I think, sea level rise and the changes, they're happening, and how we react to them, let's be proactive. So I think the counties certainly work very well together from that sort of perspective.
Not to scare anybody, and this is probably, I'm thinking out loud here, but you mentioned something about like a 3.5 foot sea level rise by the year 2070. What does that mean in context? If we did nothing,
that the projection is based on LIDAR data, all these different data
LIDAR?
sets. I can't answer that. Okay. It's like it's a really cool data thing, and it takes pictures and it does an analysis of like the water. It's not confidential, but
it's like a top.
It's secret. Confidential for me. It's top. Okay. Yes, it's okay. Top secret. Good. Yeah. It's top secret. But that's the data that they use. So if we did nothing at all for adaptation, right. This priority planning area map has basically identified the areas that there's going to be 3.3 feet above, I guess, like the water table. So it could make things very difficult on roadways, on properties.
It would wash them out?
They're what? Oh, it could wash some of them out. I mean, 3.3 is like the average, so some could be a little bit more. But it's not just the coast, right? It goes western in Broward County, not all the way west, but there's different. There's lower areas out there.
Right. I know that when the flood happened, I'm in West Boca, didn't feel it. Like, you saw the rain, the streets were, there's a lot of water and couldn't drain fast enough. But it wasn't like what happened in Broward and Fort Lauderdale and the airport. Like, I saw footage of the airport. It was wild. I was supposed to actually fly in.
Float in.
Yeah, exactly. But that kind of stuff would be like, is, I don't know if it's specific to Florida, but the weather is real here because of the ocean, right? And it creates for all sorts
the ocean, the Everglades. I mean, storms pop up any second. I mean, you've been at the beach before, right? And all of a sudden it's pouring down rain, or you see a water funnel, right?
Yes.
It's just right. It's just
I
right
saw
there.
that.
And it just happens. It's not on the radar, right? Like, you're looking at your phone.
Right. You can sometimes see the rain coming.
Sure.
Like, you see this ominous cloud and it's just gray in this one area and you're like, uh-oh, gotta move. And that's happened to us actually more than once. It's not we're on the beach all the time. I'm still very, very weary about the beach and water and my kids and stuff like that, because as they become stronger swimmers. But yeah, like you see these sorts of things and it's cool in one way, but another way I'm like, wow, this could turn fast here.
Right, it does. It turns on a dime here. I mean, the weather turns crazy. Like I said, I grew up here, and the airport, what happened in April at the airport, I've lived here, I'm 52, so I've lived here 52 years. The airport's been there the whole time. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how crazy it actually was.
Right. It was like mini Lake Okeechobee.
Wow.
Right? That's what it looked like.
But they took care of it relatively quickly.
Yeah, I mean they know it's an economic engine, right? And they had people coming in for cruises. It's all the things. It's not just people flying in out for a vacation,
right?
Or
so there's a game plan. Everybody's prepared for this. I mean,
they were they were very proactive, and I was surprised just because of the amount of water that we were seeing, how quickly it was able to reopen.
It's pretty interesting, because I guess there is you plan for these things, you hope they don't happen, but you're ready for it. Are some of the older homes or properties ready that were built I think 92, which I'm sure the code changed?
Right, so the code changed after Hurricane Andrew.
Are they prepared for another Andrew?
So this is kind of from just being just a resident of Broward County, this is kind of like a bone that I have to pick about when they talk about the older homes not being prepared. They were built before the building code. So we have all of these homes, which is 80% of the homes in Broward County, unprepared for storms. But like, our home was built in 1974, and we have all impact windows, door openings. We just put on a brand new tile roof. We do live on a tidal canal, so during the rain event, we were watching the water. We pay flood insurance. But I don't think just because a home is old doesn't mean it's prepared. Some are going to be in more low-lying areas. Obviously, the newer homes are built up with fill. But I think it's saying that just anything that was built before that time is a misnomer for not being ready for the storm. I mean, also, I'm going to leave. Like,
that's what everybody says. I just said the same thing.
If there's a huge storm coming, we had a really rough season, hurricane seasons in 2004. It was like hurricane after hurricane after hurricane. And we were just talking about this the other day. And my husband's family, they were in the aviation business. So they had a private jet that they had to get out of town. So they put the girlfriends and wives on the private jet, me, my sister-in-law, my now mother-in-law, put us on the plane. They're like, oh, we're going to come in the next plane, the guys. And then they never came. And the storm kind of missed here, but we were up in North Carolina. Like, they flew us to safety and they all stayed here. Then fast forward.
They couldn't fly because of the weather.
No, they were lying to us. They were never
really?
coming. They were never coming. They were just going to stay there. But then the next year, Hurricane Wilma came. That was 2005. And we didn't leave. And we did not, our home that we lived in did not have impact windows. We did not have shutters.
No.
I was terrified. But then almost more terrifying was we didn't have power for 3.5 weeks. We luckily had generators because my husband of the business he's in. And then we didn't have water for 3.5 weeks. Wow. So we were living, my best friend lives in Central Florida and called my husband and said, I think she's like on the verge of a nervous breakdown, right? Because you don't have power, you don't have water. That was terrifying. Things got a little better after that. We didn't have a storm for a long time. In 2017, Irma's coming here, they thought, like a direct hit. And my husband happened to be leaving town to go to a motorcycle race. And he flew back from a motorcycle race in Utah. And I picked him at the airport. I'm like, hey, I know you think you're leaving on Thursday, but you probably need to leave Wednesday because there's a storm coming. And I need to know where to turn off the house water and like what to do. And I was starting to freak out. And the next day, he's like, you just have to come with me. And so we had this race trailer with all these bikes. We took our 2 dogs, and I went with him on the road to Alabama. And there was horrible traffic, but it was the day before everybody left. So it just was a very telling experience. I'm like, I don't think I ever want to stay here if there's a storm like that coming again, despite...
My concern is the dog. I can't. She's too big to fly. And we'd have to put her in the car. And there's a lot of the decisions I make today are dog, kids, and us. It was just us. We'd get up and go. But the dogs are like real because they're part of your family.
No, our dogs had no idea what was happening when we threw them in the truck with us and like, we're leaving. Let's go. And we left.
I can tell you that perspective that you have, and we could probably talk for 20 more hours, and I haven't even scratched the surface of the stuff that is in your brain. But the fact that you say that it's amazing to live here, you were born and raised here, which is, one of very few, and you have a perspective that you're comfortable with what the future holds because you have a lot of control over it. That's a pretty special point of view that very few people have. So I'm grateful for your time. I'm thankful to have met you. You're a super cool person just in general, and we can easily flow and talk. But the fact that you took the time out of the day to give us an education, to myself, it speaks volumes to your character. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. It's so much fun talking about these things.
You're
Life,
the best.
Planning, all the good stuff.
We'll do this again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.